Let's start with what's recent first. You just talked about the toll scam.
Yeah.
Talk to me about what I've got the text on my phone. What's been going on with that?
I've gotten a bunch of those texts. My family, they've all gotten those texts. Here's what we know. It was something that started about a year ago. We believe it started with a group in Canada. It was geolocated to a major city there. Then we think they moved to the United States, and in that process, for a few months, there was a lull in the number of texts we were all getting. But now they've apparently set up shop in the United States, and they've dramatically ramped up the operation, which indicates it is a highly profitable operation. Folks are just falling for this because it's become more sophisticated. The language they use in the texts is getting more and more convincing, and the URLs that they use actually look pretty legitimate. They actually have the root URL for QuickPass, NC QuickPass, says ncquickpass.com, and then it's the last bit, the alphanumeric at the end, that redirects to a fake website. So they've actually got a pretty convincing text message that's going out now. We are going to be announcing some action that we're taking on this in the very near future, and we'll let you know.
You talked about the latest, I guess, phases of Helene-related consumer scams. Can you tell me about those?
In the immediate aftermath of the hurricane, main focus was on price gouging, and we're still taking action on some price gouging. That still exists, but now that we're moving into more of a rebuilding phase, the emphasis is shifting onto preventing contracting fraud. Most contractors, good people, but there are some who are going to try and take advantage of some desperate folks, in particular, desperate homeowners. If you're a homeowner and you're trying to do some repair work and the deal that you're being offered strikes you as something dishonest, or if something wacky is happening, like they're asking for payment in Bitcoin, let our office know and we'll investigate.
The percentage on those transactions, extremely low, I imagine?
Yeah, extremely low, but we're still at an early stage. What we want to do is send a message to anyone who would try and be a dishonest contractor that if you do that, you're going to come up against us.
We're standing just a mile from the hospital. There was a report a week ago of a suspicious death, and of course Governor Stein's lawsuit when he was Attorney General. What does that look like for you now, kind of carrying the baton and monitoring HCA Healthcare?
Every time I come out west, it's one of the number one things we hear about, stories about what's going on with Mission. It's a very high priority for our office. We are continuing the litigation that my predecessor began. The tragic death recently points to a lot of the reason for the lawsuit. The lawsuit itself, a big piece of it, is about emergency care. It's also about oncology. Those were two big areas where they had a contractual agreement to maintain a certain level of care. We think there is very strong evidence that they have failed to meet that level of care. That's the basis of the lawsuit. If we don't reach a conclusion that is acceptable, then we're going to see them in court within the next few months.
Miles from Canton as well. We just wrapped up the lawsuit with Pactiv. Anything active going on with that, or are we settled?
The important part of the settlement wasn't just the amount, but it was also that the amount stayed in Canton. So the best part of this settlement, yes, they got millions of dollars, but that's millions of dollars that the town itself will be able to use to help them turn the page.
And is the mill, they were receiving state grant money to employ people, and then they obviously weren't employing people. Is there any litigation involved with that?
This resolution encompasses that.
All that, okay.
Yes.
Senate Bill 58. Mm-hmm. I know you've talked about it before, but just for our people to understand, you have joined other attorneys general in opposing President Trump's executive orders. The North Carolina legislature is trying to stop you from doing that. Why, as Attorney General, why is that not a safe thing in your mind?
Attorney General is supposed to be independent. Anything that ties the hand of the Attorney General really doesn't serve the state well in the long run. In this instance, there have been roughly 90 executive orders. We have joined lawsuits with respect to 4 of them. One of them in particular would have hurt the state to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars, led to thousands of job losses, including a lot of rural counties. I just don't think the people of this state want to see that impact.
And this is not just the only bill, there was 382 as well. You were elected into an office that looks a little bit different than it does today. How do you reconcile that?
Look, I don't take it personally. I served in the state legislature. I know a lot of these folks, and I respect them and the role they play in the governing process. And we're going to have ways to work together because this job is supposed to be done in a way that's basically nonpartisan. It's a law enforcement job. It's about supporting the law, enforcing the law, making sure we keep people safe, making sure that we hold powerful people accountable when they break the law. It's totally nonpartisan.
Some of your Republican colleagues have been critical that you're going after President Trump in some sort of big scale Democratic show and not focused enough on North Carolina specifically. What would you say to them?
The lawsuits that we have filed were ones that specifically impacted North Carolina, often to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. This is exactly why you want an independent attorney general. When the federal government overreaches, you want an attorney general who is able to push back.
Are you at all closely monitoring the recount contest in the Supreme Court in North Carolina?
So the North Carolina Department of Justice is representing the State Board of Elections in that matter. They have now tallied the vote 3 times, the initial tally and then 2 recounts. All 3 of those pointed to the same person as the winner. We are representing our client in this matter, the State Board of Elections.
Okay, so that is where your involvement begins and ends. Anything else your office, whether it was in the last 5 months or something, you are wary about in the future?
So we're going to be getting more aggressive on robocalls generally. We're going to be making some announcements there. We're also stepping up with respect to fentanyl, and in particular the money laundering that is propping up fentanyl. We're going to have some announcements there as well.
Are you able to think about 2 years from now what the recovery will look like here and how your office will be assisting that, or are you solely focused on what we can do today, or do you have to do both?
Look, if you have a real sense of the challenge here, you know it's a long-term commitment, which means from our office it's going to be a long-term commitment. That means the best thing that I can do right now is send a message that anyone who wants to break the law or rip people off better not, because they're going to run up against us. What I want to help do is achieve some deterrence to make sure that the folks here who are just trying to recover have the freedom to do that without bad actors coming in and trying to interfere.